Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are speeding through London Prodigal. We get to hear from Delia today in Act 1, Scene 7, but we just finished Act 1, Scene 3 yesterday, so buckle up. This is going to be a long one. So what has happened so far? We have Spurcock, who has 3 daughters, and there's suitors for all of the daughters except for Delia, and there's a lot of suitors for Luce, one of whom is Matthew Flowerdale, who is a bit of a playboy, he's a cheat, he's a liar, all these sorts of things. And his dad is currently in disguise to keep an eye on him. And when Matthew started to freak out that there were too many suitors for Luce, so she might not actually choose him, his dad was like, let's make up a fake will and we'll give it to the biggest blabbermouth in town and tell him not to share it with anybody, because then it will absolutely get shared with everybody. And in this fake will, we'll make it look like you are extremely rich and have all sorts of stuff and land and servants and money and all that kind of thing, and that you would leave it all to Luce if you get married. So then Spurcock will let you marry Luce. So that's basically what's going on at this point. So Act 1, Scene 4 starts out. We have Daffodil and Luce, and they're in a room in Spurcock's house, which is where Luce is still living because she's Spurcock's daughter. And he's making advances towards her, and she is not having it at all. And he grabs her, but all he gets is her bracelet. Like, her bracelet comes off, and she threatens him. But right then, Spurcock and Weathercock enter. So she's like, that Daffodil is getting saucy, and she storms out. Spurcock tries to tell Daffodil, like, to go away, and Daffodil's like, you know, you shouldn't be brushing me off like that. And Weathercock is like, yeah, actually, he's a pretty good dude. So Spurcock is like, okay, well, you just go get us some wine so that Weathercock and I can toast the fact that he's leaving. And Daffodil goes to get that. And while he's off stage, Weathercock is like, you know, I wouldn't count that Matthew Flowerdale out of the mix. He's a pretty good guy. At which point Daffodil returns with the wine, and Spurcock notices that he's wearing Luce's bracelet, but he doesn't say anything just yet. They pour the wine, they toast Weathercock, you know, good travels, thanks for being here, my friend, huzzah, cool, cool, cool. Weathercock leaves, and then Spurcock turns on Daffodil and starts yelling at him. He's like, get my daughter's bracelet off your wrist. You should not have that. Give me your livery. You are fired. Get out of my house. And Daffodil's like, yeah, fine, here, have your livery. And he leaves. And Spurcock has a line at the end of this scene that's sort of like, well, you know, I guess I had to make an example out of someone such as him, thinking that he could marry above his station to be with somebody such as Luce. And that's basically that scene. Act 1, Scene 5, we're in another room in Spurcock's house, and now we're with Luce and Greenshield. Sir Arthur Greenshield is another person who wants to marry Luce, and she's talking to him, and she's like, you know, I would like to be with you, though, you know, I would choose you amongst all my suitors, but you're a soldier, and soldiers aren't really known for being romantic. They're kind of known for, like, being ruffians and that sort of thing. And he's like, no. There's plenty of, like, ruffian type soldiers, but those aren't actual soldiers. Those aren't gentlemen. Those are scoundrels. And that's not who I am. I'm a good man. And she's like, okay, then I'm cool with being a soldier's wife. And that's the end of Act 1, Scene 5. Act 1, Scene 6. We're in another room in Spurcock's house. And now we're Spurcock and Oliver. And Spurcock is like, yes, you will get to marry Luce. We're going to have 2 weddings in 2 days. We're going to have Francis get married. We're going to have Luce get married. And you're the one that gets to marry Luce. Let's meet up tomorrow and we'll hammer out all of these details. And there's a little back and forth. We should meet here. No, we should meet there. And it's all very, very human, but also very unnecessary. And then Artichoke enters to say that somebody has arrived with a message from Matthew Flowerdale. So old Flowerdale enters to deliver this message, and he has the message, which is, it's like a letter, but he has it on the tip of his sword, and he presents it like that to Oliver. So, like, pointing the sword at Oliver with this note on the end of it saying, like, here, take this message, which means that what is contained in the message is an invitation to duel from Matthew. And Oliver is like, I'll duel him anywhere. Where do I need to go? And blah, 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 blah. And old Flowerdale's like, just read the thing and it will tell you where and when. And Oliver, you know, he's got sort of a short temper. He's like ready to go off, and he starts insulting old Flowerdale, and there's some stuff spit back and forth at each other until finally old Flowerdale is like, you know what, my master deserves better than this, and he leaves. So Oliver he's now very excited to go duel Matthew. He wants to be done with Matthew. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. And he's like, I'm gonna go prepare for this duel. So he goes to get ready. And Spurcock calls Artichoke back in to tell him to start getting the weapons ready for the duel so that this duel can happen. And Artichoke finally agrees to do that. Artichoke is upset that Daffodil isn't around anymore, but he's like, okay, fine, I'll go get the stuff. But then Weathercock enters, and Weathercock has the fake will that the Flowerdales had drawn up, and he has obviously read it at this point. So he shows it to Spurcock, and Spurcock, like, it just says he reads the will, but then the lines that he has after it are sort of like, you can see his eyes just growing wider and wider as he reads this will and gets so excited about all the stuff that's in it and the fact that all the stuff that's in it would be left to loose. So he's like, absolutely, she's gonna marry Matthew. That's it. This is gonna be the best thing. She's gonna marry Matthew. We're gonna cancel the duel between Oliver and Matthew. We're gonna go to London and get everything in order. My daughter Delia can hammer out all the details. We'll have Francis and Luce get married at the same time. Let's all go to London and make this happen. And that's the end of Act 1, Scene 6. So, whew, we finally made it to Act 1, Scene 7, where we will get to hear from Delia today. She's mostly been in the background up until now. But in Act 1, Scene 7, we're on the street in front of Spurcock's house, and it's Master Tom Civet and Francis and Delia, and they're all talking, and they're very excited about the fact that Civet is going to get to marry Francis. They're like, oh, this is great, and I've looked forward to marrying you, and this is so cool. Like, after we get married... Actually, Francis doesn't talk a whole lot in this. It's mostly between Civet and Delia. Delia's like, well, how should she dress when she's married to you? Like, what are your expectations of this? And he says, I'll keep her in her French gowns and whatever. And they're like, well, maybe you should be more like your parents. And he's like, that's silly that I should have to dress the way that my parents did. My parents did not dress the way that I want to dress. And Delia's like, yeah, but they were just as rich as you. So like the way that they dressed showed off their wealth the same as you might. And he's like, no, I have enough money and I've inherited an estate. And Delia replies, that may indeed, 'tis very fitly plied. I know not how it comes, but... so it falls out, that those whose fathers have died wondrous rich, and took no pleasure but to gather wealth, thinking of little that they leave behind, for them they hope will be of their like mind. But falls out contrary, 40 years sparing is scarce 3 7 years spending, never caring. What will ensue when all their coin is gone? And all too late then thrift is thought upon. Oft have I heard that pride and riot kissed, and then repentance cries, oh, for had I wist. So what she's saying, this is almost like a commentary on new money versus old money. She's like, okay, yes, you have your estate and your father left you this inheritance and all that's kind of great. But the fact that he created all of this wealth for you meant that he wasn't spending on a lot of stuff. Whereas if you go out and spend on a lot of stuff, your money's not going to last very long. And because all your money is from an inheritance, you won't know how to get more. So he could have been scrimping and saving and scrounging for like 40 years and give it like 20 years and all the money's gone. And then what do you do? She's like, I've heard the tale so often that people who inherit money just run around spending it like crazy, and then they're out of money and they're like, oh, if only I'd known, sort of a thing. And Civet replies, he's like, yes, I know, but my plan is to live within our means. And they're like, okay, cool, let's all go have dinner, which they do. And that's the end of Act 1, Scene 7. They all leave to go have dinner. So, whew, that was a long one, but we're making progress in this. We've got one daughter definitely getting married. We've got Francis getting married to Civet. We've got Luce, who has now been sort of promised to 3 different men, depending on what angle you're taking a look at. So that's a mess that we need to sort out. And we've got some, hurt feelings. We still have this fake will. We've got the father-son thing going on between the Flowerdales. It's just, yeah, lots of fun ways for this play to go. And come on back tomorrow. Tomorrow's monologue is from Act 1, Scene 8, so we'll be able to breathe a little bit more in that one. And I'll see you tomorrow for that. Mwah.